Then okay. Me.
No.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna start off with Sammy?
We're gonna start off with Sammy.
Okay.
Um,
Where are
Lorne,
you ambushing Sandy?
I'm not ambushing her anywhere, gosh. Well, it's not an ambush at least.
That's what we all say.
Where does she usually vibe?
Um, Sammy normally vibes in places with her mom. When she's not with her mom, she is with one of the ever responsible adults, TM,
Mm-hmm.
or she is hanging out in the common room or her room.
Okay. Let us do either the common room or I know that the rooms also have their kind of own common room as well, don't they?
Yeah.
So it could be there too. Or even her room. Either one. Either of the three. So let me just roll a die here. So one common room, two other common room, three her room. Okay, it's the other common room. So in
Alrighty.
this area. Right over here.
Okay.
And Lauren will be approaching, we'll say this is after vent talk, so she is approaching the appropriate way, like a normal human being,
Not using a vent?
not using a vent.
Goodness.
I know. I mean, later on, she may have to task Mac with going in and cleaning up her stuff in the vents.
Mac will quite promptly tell you no.
Help her
There's
get
things
over her
that lives in
fear.
those vents.
The thing is me, but not up here anymore. Okay, so she comes in, and is Sammy in her room then? Or is she in the area?
She could be in the common area right now,
Okay.
just reading a book.
Lauren walks in, and she's holding a fuzzy little something.
Oh no. Alright, Lauren's pretty quiet when she walks, so Sammy probably doesn't hear Lauren approach.
Yeah, she's pretty quiet. If you want me to roll her stealth, I can.
No,
Just
no,
for
no,
the additional
it's
giggles.
alright.
That does remind me I should open up her sheet anyways. Because rolls are bound to be made. Especially with Lauren around doing her empathy thing. Okay. She does approach.
Okay. Do you acknowledge yourself or just say something when you finally get right next to Sammy like a creep?
She'll deliberately make a sound as she approaches.
Okay, Sammy kind of looks over, smiles a bit. Hi,
Hello.
Lauren.
Hi, Sammy. Look who I
Um,
brought. And she holds
um,
her arms out, or, lowers her hands a little bit as she approaches. And it's a little
is that
fuzzy boy.
is that your little mouse?
It is Mouse. Sh-
What's her name? Uh,
Mouse.
that's not very creative, but if it works, it works.
If you can think of something else, I can consider it.
Well, if you've been calling it a mouse this whole time, it wouldn't do well to change it, right?
Well, as far as I'm aware, I don't think mice really recognize their names.
Oh, well,
And she sits next to Sammy.
Sammy kind of shrugs and says, I'm pretty sure most pets recognize more so the tone of your voice when you say their name rather than the name itself.
Yes, that does sound about right.
So you could just spell it funny, but make it still be mouse, I guess. Like Maus.
M-A-U-S. Okay. I will consider. I know there are other circumstances of other people having, say, a dog. I've heard stories of how they'll call their dog over with the silliest names and the dog will still come.
Sammy slowly nods and says, I guess, but, well, I can't say for sure. I've never had any pets.
To be honest, I really can't verify that myself.
She is holding
Smiles a
the
bit.
mouse down to Sammy's level and offering Sammy to hold if she wants.
Sammy politely, doesn't reach for a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Seems Sammy is not too fond of it.
Hmm.
But it's not like oh, I can't believe you're showing me this creature, Lorne. It's more so just that's nice, Lorne, but I'm not here for it.
Right.
She's not
See,
afraid of it by any means. It's
she doesn't
just,
really want to touch it though.
yeah.
Lauren will she'll basically just move her hands enough that to signify that she understands the signal, but will continue to hold the mouse like basically her lap or whatever, so Sammy can watch her play with the
Yeah.
mouse, basically like do the endless treadmill with the mouse. And occasionally doing the thing of like when you cup your hands over a mouse or a hamster and they try to poke their little nose out through the cracks of your fingers.
Okay, yeah. So, how are you liking your mouse?
I like my mouse.
Well,
It gives
that's
me
good.
something to think about outside of normal ship activities.
Well, it seems good that they're well enough behaved.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if they used to be a pet mouse and just got lost, I guess, on the Rossi at some point.
Considering the circumstances of how we found it, I am curious if perhaps, not that it was someone's pet before, but perhaps further up in its family line, so to speak, that it may have been domesticated at one point or another.
And she pets little mouse's head.
She just kind of nods her head a bit.
I don't really know much about genetics, though. I would presume that's something more that Hana or one of the other engineers or scientists, even Rai, I'd imagine as a medical officer, would know. Or your mother,
Oh,
of course.
Sammy just kind of nods her head. Yeah, um, I don't think anyone's actually had any pets on the Rossi. I think Mouse is the first.
Lord smiles at that.
I kind of had that idea when
Well, she doesn't say Mel. She never calls him though. She's the captain.
uh, when Captain was fairly firm about my not keeping Mouse.
Pets Mouse's head.
Oh, well then, how were you able to keep them?
I told him that I would be feeding Mouse out of my own rations and I would take very good care of them. And they are small.
To emphasize the point of how small Mouse is. Like, she opens her hands, lets the mouse do the treadmill, and this mouse is so small in her long hands.
She nods her head.
if it was like some of the other critters that had been aboard at the same time, I do not think Captain would have been as receptive to the idea. There was one very, very fat rat that I imagine would have required much feeding.
And I'm sure rats aren't really good to keep on a ship, she says with a slow smile.
Ooh. We will empty that, because I'm not quite picking up what she's meaning on that. What is my role? My role of empathy. Interrogation club. Okay. I really gotta make like a macro for this. It's +1 for specialty, right? And then
Yep,
with
and
the
rerolls.
okay, and the reroll. Okay. So it's 8, and then I'll just reroll any. Okay, it's just 2.
Okay. Oh, that's why it's so big. It's because my things moved over. So you are able to determine that a slight aversion to that idea of a fat rat being kept as a pet.
Mm-hmm.
It's very apparent that Sammy has her own kind of idea on these sorts of critters. Also, just at the a slight that seems kind of not exactly safe. But it's not, like anything beyond that. It's just I don't really think that would work out at all. Sort of expression.
Mm-hmm.
But, she's also still smiling because, Lorne's showing interest in that, and she doesn't want to, make Lorne be like, oh, you don't like a mouse.
Right.
Or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Back on the station that I am from, the few animals that we were accustomed to seeing were rodents, as it is difficult to keep any kind of livestock aboard a station feasibly. And I have come to find that rats are quite intelligent. And I do think that they get a bad name in being thought of as dirty creatures. But I do agree. This ship is, as big as it may feel, it is still fairly small. But it does have crevices and places that were we to have a rat that, as smart as they may be, were to escape, it would be difficult to locate.
Well, that may be true, but, she slowly shrugs. Rats also, eat food and scamper around in things. Not the best of, guests on board a ship.
But Sammy, do we not all eat food and scamper about?
But we're supposed to eat the food.
Lorne is smiling knowingly.
Yes. How have you been?
I've been alright.
Oh wow! Okay, let me reroll those 8s here. The 8 successes. Empathy.
Yeah, she's not lying with that. She is indeed doing alright. With that, you're also able to determine that Um, Sammy has been a lot on her mind, but she hasn't been stressed or anything. She has quite literally been doing all right because the little bit of bad, a little bit of good, overall a-okay.
Nice.
There's not like a turmoil of emotions or anything. She's pretty neutral right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have not been around so much during everything that has happened recently.
Well, that's because you've been keeping busy.
I know. I presume you've been doing fairly well even with the Morgan and Pryor.
Sammy slowly nods. Yeah, it's kind of scary, but it all worked out. I think.
It did. That's how I feel about it as well.
Sammy smiles at that. Glad to know that someone else is also seeing things that way.
Right. Instead of like grr arg, all right or evil.
It is possible that they may cause trouble for us further along the road. But
Mm,
that, of course, is something we will have to deal with when we get there.
Mom said the same thing.
Lorne nods.
Your mother is reasonable.
Mm-hmm. So, I take it you just came down here to see how I was doing, Lorne?
I did.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I thought I'd
Um,
show you Mouse
oh,
since it occurred to me that I had not shown her before.
well, thank you for showing me Mouse. Sorry if I'm not too interested in them. I don't like rodents or other small things that scuttle around.
That's quite all right. I know you are not the first one to dislike such things.
She nods her head.
And as it is to each their own.
Mm-hmm. So how does Mouse handle the lower gravity in your room, or do we have a special enclosure that works with that?
How does Mouse handle the lower gravity in my room?
Um, Depends on how low you set it.
Well, I mean, my gravity's pretty damn low.
Like, it took Mouse a little while to, you know, get used to it, and
Mm-hmm.
every time you take them out of that environment, they're kind of confused. But every time you've taken them out, they've been better and better.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Lorne, you've noticed that you have to take them out to exercise them more and more, just because the low gravity kind of has made Mouse a bit lankier,
Mm-hmm.
but because you do the endless treadmill stuff with him pretty frequently, I imagine,
Absolutely.
in the standard gravity, aka zero point 0.5. It's, Mouse has been getting their exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the water system to feed Mouse and the food bowl is a little bit different than normal.
I suppose that would affect it. Considering that Finn helped her make the enclosure, um, is there anything that cheaply could have been done to make the small habitat comfortable for Mouse within her room?
Yeah, like I imagine it could be set up because there's extra grav plating just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to replace the grav platings on a pretty frequent, basis.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Rossi, like, the only place that has good grav plating is Lorne's room.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of Rossi has, the more standard stuff.
Okay.
Um, so Mouse's enclosure is probably a little heavy, just because it has its own little grav plating that can be, adjusted to make things more comfortable for a mouse when need be.
Okay.
And I also imagine that, just has a custom sort of water spout and a custom like food dispenser,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just so that when it is low gravity and there, that the mouse can easily drink.
Yeah.
Having to struggle to get that water out.
With having Mouse in her room, when she knows she's not gonna be in the room, I can imagine, because I didn't know she could adjust the gravity in her room. Knowing that now, she probably lower or ups the gravity when she's not in the room.
Yeah.
And then when she returns, like for sleeping or whatever, she lowers it again.
Yeah, that's easily done.
Okay.
Whenever gravity does change, Mouse does, well, used to kind of freak out, but they've gotten used to it to a point where it doesn't stress them out.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it's done enough, it kind of becomes not a Pavlov effect, but because Mouse sees me enter room, Mouse anticipates gravity change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's no longer, like, what's
Right.
happening. It's just, it changes.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know that a lorne is here.
I imagine the rodents of the stations, the Proxian stations, are probably lanky
Long,
boys.
lanky.
Slightly more mutated.
Little webbies between connecting their legs to their body so that they can, kind of flat.
Oh my god, I love them.
Not really.
Love them.
They definitely float.
So when Lauren says mice, or rats and mice, she has different imagery in her head.
Mouse is doing well with the gravity. I change it when I am not in the room so that it's more comfortable for it.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy says with a smile.
I used to be scared when I would change it, but I think it has gotten used to the changes, or has at least associated myself entering the room with an incoming change in gravity.
Sammy kind of nods and says, well, that makes sense.
I only hope that it does not prolong the distress from my mouse. It is hard to tell with rodents. And she pets it.
Well, you've had them for a while, so they probably have gotten used to it. Or very least know when to expect it.
Yes. I hope it is not harming its health. They already live such short lives.
Sammy nods her head again. Yeah. Maybe that's something you can ask Rai?
Maybe.
Or maybe even Hana. Since, well, it's a medical question, but it's also an animal question.
Maybe.
Pets Mouse.
What have you and Mac been up to?
Reading and doing little games, and also I've been helping Mac with some of the homework stuff that Hana gives us. Hana says if I can help, then it helps me better understand too.
This is true.
Sammy nods. Yep. So it's mostly just that.
That is good that you are still getting an education.
Mm-hmm.
I am glad Hana is helping.
Well, I think it was partially Hana's idea, since, well, he saw Mom homeschooling, and I'm pretty sure Hana was offended by it.
Ah, amusing.
Hmm?
As she said, amusing.
Yeah.
With such a varied amount of people aboard, I'm sure you are learning many things.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of weird though sometimes. Celeste drops in, and then, well, more recently at least, drops in and takes Mac off to go do other lessons with her. But that's only recent. But Mac seems all right with them.
Without yourself?
Well, normally when that happens, Hana that goes over other feelings with me.
Ah, that is interesting.
I asked Celeste and Mac separately what that was all about, and Celeste said that Ram wanted her to teach Mac some things, and Mac just said that she's learning a lot of history stuff, and that she doesn't find it super interesting.
History is. There is much to learn from it.
Yep.
And with how vast this universe is and how sprawled out humanity has become, there are many different kinds of histories to learn.
Mm, I guess.
I take it that is not quite your.
What is it called? When a subject is not.
Forte?
Yeah, thank you.
I take it history is not your forte.
Mm, I understand it, but most of it kind of boils down to a few core things which I don't really like, so she kind of shrugs.
Is it that it is nonfiction?
No, it's just that most history, mm, most history is just about the bad and not the good,
This is true.
and well, depending upon whose history it is, depends on who's the bad guys and who are the good guys. But then the other people say it's completely different, so it's kind of muddled.
It is.
And
It is difficult to parse a non biased version of any kind of history, as the saying I believe is history is written by the winners.
mm-hmm. That's what Mom and Hana say.
So it is best to try to find history written but from both sides if possible.
Mm. Well, even so, it's still kind of depressing because most history kind of boils down to uh, one group of people were angry with another group of people, so they attacked that group of people,
Yes.
and then someone wins or loses. I like learning about the the scientists and engineers stuff because that's more nice, or the people who discovered uh, well, new things, because again that's more nice history
Mm,
compared to the history that matters. She kind of shrugs.
it all matters.
Mm, Well, there's. And she kind of like closes her eyes as she thinks, and then she seems to like count with one of her hands a bit. Before she says, 22 different research vessels that discovered alien microbes first. She kind of looks up at Lauren and gives a bit of a smile.
Yes?
So all of them were the first because none of them had contacted each other before then. But, well, only one of them was actually the first. She kind of shrugs. But to each of them, they were the first ones to do it. But I remember that it was... Some of them did react a bit differently than others, but for most part they all reacted the same way. Being careful about it because, well, they didn't want to introduce those microbes to our microbes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what she's talking about would be that would qualify under my. Let's see. Is that xenoarchaeology then?
Xenobiology.
Xenomorphology?
Yeah.
Lorne actually has nothing in that.
So xenoarchaeology mostly works for like ancient history, and a handful of alien artifacts that may or may not exist. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Church is like, there is no ancient artifacts that predate humanity, but look at this cool rock. It's pretty cool, ain't it?
Pretty neat.
Pretty neat. Look at this ancient text that we base our entire faith off of. Does it predate humanity? No, definitely not.
Is it possible that the Lorne is infinitology, obviously? Considering the way she handles it, would it... I suppose, because there's different kinds of belief systems as well, because someone can take basically the values of a system but still accept other things, so...
Yeah, kind of like how there's a bazillion different Catholicisms, despite it all technically being Christianity.
Yeah, so Lorne, I think, at least for that belief, is not so bothered by the idea that there could have been something that predated humanity, considering the vast span of the universe. Like,
yeah,
she takes the idea of everything being infinite, and clearly if it is infinite going forward, then it is also infinite going backwards.
Yeah, like it's more so just that the Church of Infinitology does trace its roots back to Old Terra, prior to the Imperium.
Right.
Which is why it's so widespread now, because during that time, well, despite science being the main thing, Infinitology nicely slipped in on there because it doesn't discredit science, it actually embraces science.
Yeah.
So people who were looking for faith but believed in, science were able to easily connect to it as well.
Okay.
And most of their teachings predate to a belief system that existed during the ancient era of humanity.
Okay.
And then they just revested it and revamped it.
Okay,
AKA, they found a marker.
Right, exactly. I think considering that Lorne is a drifter as well, and so they're a little bit more isolated from a lot of the more recent history.
Yep.
And that the way I'm kind of working with it is that the drifters had a belief system that already had some echoes of infinitology without it actually being infinitology. So when a missionary came and was like, hey, here's infinitology, the drifters are like, oh, that's fairly similar, but then just kind of adapted it into their beliefs, or at least that's how Lorne is handling it.
Which 100% can work.
Okay, cool. Beans. Thumbs up. So,
But yeah,
either way,
so
though, she don't know what... she doesn't know as much as Sammy, because Sammy clearly has more experience in this.
Sammy likes biology. Sammy, however, is scared of biology. Sweats.
I mean, that's fair, that's fair. Okay, Void Lore. What exactly does that cover, then?
Void lore covers quote unquote secrets of the universe and more spiritual things.
Okay,
So,
so that's the more
void,
faith-based stuff.
yeah, that's more face-based stuff, and also like understanding um, the old symbols.
Mm-hmm.
It's why to you some the four symbols that was on that rock
Mm-hmm.
were vaguely familiar to you because it very much did look like some of the scripture that infinitology follows. It's just that that stuff looked different.
Mm-hmm. Like a different
It didn't
sect of it, almost.
almost like a different language of it, as if
Okay.
there was like a branching language,
Uh-huh.
and that this was a part of that branch. So like the difference between French and Spanish,
Gotcha,
essentially,
gotcha.
or better yet, Spanish and Latin,
There you go.
because
There you go.
yeah, they both came from the same thing, but diverged.
Yep, 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 yep.
I do have to say,
And
Oh, go ahead.
oh,
Go.
sorry, and the last thing is that void lore also does help with understanding the some of the spookiness that occurs during
Uh-huh.
shock stuff. Ooh.
Hey, very nice. That's lore, nim nom, nim nom, nim nom, nim.
Yeah, that's the void lore is basically your occult stat from
Uh-huh.
like WAD
Hella.
for certain faith and spooky things. That's where it applies.
Cool. So that just means I need to up it later. Wink. Okay. Um,
I do have to say, Sammy, that your education on such matters has surpassed what I already know.
Well, she kind of shrugs a bit. I am actively learning it though, and it's been a long time since you've been to school, right?
Yes.
Well, if you
Also,
weren't really interested in this stuff, maybe you kind of forgot it.
the kind of teaching I received was also a little different.
She kind of nods. Yeah, I can imagine.
As an arbiter, my interest in the faith was fairly early in my childhood. And so I suppose the education I received would be that akin to
oh, what a space version of a Catholic school.
Um, it could just be a school of infinitology.
Okay.
I learned from the School of Infinitology.
Sammy nods her head. Oh, I'm sure they did teach you all sorts of stuff there.
We did learn the basics. I will admit I have forgotten some of the other stuff that did not quite stick.
That's okay.
What kind of book is she reading right now? Is it homework stuff or her own?
Her own. Classic English literature, aka not actually our classic, just modern day classic.
Nice.
What it's about, I don't know.
Right.
Just classic literature.
It's Animorphs. You did say she kind of
Harry
liked
Potter.
biology, but it scared her. Well, there you go. That's a book series.
Evil slugs.
Yep, evil slugs, yerks.
Well, I'll let you get back to your book.
Well, all right. Well, thank you for showing me Mouse.
Thank you for speaking with me.
Sammy smiles. You're welcome.
And I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Lorne.
And she gets up and she starts to move. And then she stops. She's
One more thing.
Yeah?
because out of character, everyone was up and about because when we were with the Morgan and we went into shock, we didn't need to cryo, yeah?
E.
When we were attached to the Morgan, and we went into shock, do you remember what your experience was like in those first few moments? I am curious. I'm kind of taking a poll.
Everything kind of smells like, so, you know when Trent burns the buns?
Yes.
Everything kind of smells like that.
Lauren wrinkles her nose.
And then, then when right before the sensation fades, it kind of tastes funny. I don't know. It's like I'm tasting a color, but I don't know what color that is.
I get that.
It's weird.
Kind of. I taste colors.
It's kind of weird.
It is weird.
She commiserates.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then she'll be on her way. Yay!
Yeah.
We did a talk. That was a good talk, too.